Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, senior editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, with you for another episode of the Steelers Preview. We're getting ready for Week 9, the Chicago Bears Monday Night Football, and we have a lot of stuff to talk about, including a schedule for next week for our YouTube programming as well as our morning shows. We'll talk about all that. To do that and more, we'll bring on people like Brian Anthony Davis, our podcast producer. What's up, Brian? How are you?
Very good, Jeff. Dave, good to see you, fellas. Hey, it is beautiful when your Steelers are 4-3 and you're getting ready to play Monday Night Football against a storied rival from the old NFL days.
Yeah, been a while since they've beaten the Bears. Anyways, Dave Schofield, what's up, Dave?
Hey, I'm just happy to be here talking with you guys. It's weird because it's Thursday, but it feels like Wednesday because the Steelers have an extra day, yet tomorrow's Friday. The Steelers schedule being off throws off my schedule. I don't know if anyone else is like that or not.
Well, especially with the website and our podcasting platform, when you're so regimented during the season with how you do things on a typical Sunday, and then all of a sudden that gets thrown out the window. It's definitely next week's going to be even crazier because the game's on Monday. Tomlin will be talking with media on Tuesday, and then they're going to be gearing up for the Lions in Week 10. I want to get things started right off the bat with just a quick question. We have to talk about this because you're talking about the Bears. You're talking about coming off of the Browns win in Week 8. Do we talk about a letdown? Is this a letdown game waiting to happen, Brian Anthony Davis, yes or no?
It's always a letdown game waiting to happen when the Steelers are favored. So yes, there is a possibility.
Would you say that the Seattle Week 6 game was a letdown, Brian?
No, I really don't, because that is a team that was playing well but had an injury that has...
Where'd you go?
I don't know.
Stop talking.
Hey, you're still here.
You just stop talking.
there was crazy music in my ears, and I was like, "Wow!"
You got something going on in another tab.
Yeah, it was a crazy jingle, and I'm like, "Oh, what have I done?" Seattle had 3 losses when that happened. That could have, that would have been a letdown game if they lose it, but this is a little bit more because now there are higher expectations than there were back in the Seattle game. Okay. The reason there's higher expectations is this team has won 3 straight. They're 4-3. They are possibly on the verge. So if I'm going to steal from the title, you cannot overlook any team, but you definitely can't overlook a team like the Chicago Bears that were a playoff team actually last year, and that won 3 games in a row at one point this season.
Yeah, and you forget that they did make the playoffs last year. But Dave, I'll go ahead and ask you the same question I asked Brian. Is this a letdown waiting to happen?
This is the letdown potential. Whether or not it is a letdown depends on how they play and if they win the game. But to me, I have my own numerical formula to whether or not it's a potential letdown game. And that is if you're coming off of course. No. Well, I won't go too much into the numbers. But no, I think people agree with this. If you're coming off of a win of a game in which you were an underdog, and then you are favored by more than 3 points, that's the potential for the letdown game, in my opinion. Because you just won a game that you weren't supposed to. Now, are you going to not win the game that you are supposed to? That to me would be a letdown game. And if they don't win this, that's what it is. And these happen. We've seen them. We've seen close ones, and that's the thing. Because sometimes you can still manage to win the game. But look, like the Tennessee Titans came off of 2 huge victories, and then they basically woulda, coulda, shoulda lost to the Colts. The same thing happened to the Bengals. They had that big win over Baltimore. Then they go into New York and when they're big favorites and lose it. So that to me would be a letdown game. So this is the formula to be that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm going to have to. It's something that Michael Beck said, I believe, on Tuesday on his Live Mike podcast, which you can check out on our podcast platform, wherever you get your podcasts. He said that I think that it being a primetime game helps in that regard.
Absolutely.
National
Completely agree.
stage. I think the color rush uniforms being worn, like, I think that all helps. I've always said, like, if you have to motivate yourself, that's a problem. Like, if you're a professional athlete, you have to get up for a game. Like, that's a bigger issue. We have bigger issues, but still, there are times where you look at a team like the Bears and Justin Fields as a rookie quarterback, and you're like, well, they didn't have our attention like that division game last week on the road against the Browns, and that was a really tough game coming off of a bye. They spent 2 weeks on that game preparing for that game, so I could see why that is maybe considered to be a concern. Nonetheless, let's talk about the Bears a little bit. Brian, you mentioned it. This is the title of the podcast, why they shouldn't be overlooked. We know they love to run the ball. Dave's going to give us some numbers on that. But Brian, give me another reason why the Bears should not be overlooked by the Pittsburgh Steelers, or in that respect, their fans who might be, looking ahead already past week 9.
Well, when you look at this team, the Chicago Bears, you see, once again, a team that was in the playoffs last year, and they have a very good running game. Now, they have a rookie named Khalil Herbert, who is doing some very good things that a lot of people, myself included, didn't know much about. But this guy has the ability to really get free and beat up on this team. But they also have a decent defense on this team, but they have some key injuries on that defense as well. The one thing that might be an advantage for the Steelers this week is the fact that Jeff is not the fan of the week for this primetime game. The last time Jeff was the fan of the week from NBC, the team was embarrassed.
Oh, that was a horrible start to the season. They started 0-4 that year. It was 2013, and it's a great experience, though. It was a great experience. I'll never forget that weekend. That was a great weekend. Great seats. Was on the field before.
I keep looking for footage. I haven't found the footage, but I'm waiting to see the Hartmans. Like,
No. I don't know if we ever even made it on TV, to be honest with you. But no, it was great. That was Jonathan Dwyer was the running back at that time. It was bad. Troy Polamalu was just coming off injury that week 3, I think.
Because Lev Bell was still out. He hadn't played his first game yet.
Right, his first game was in
He didn't play the week 4 in England.
Yeah. Yep, Greg Jennings game.
Yeah.
So, okay, thanks for bringing that up. I didn't intend to bring it
Twist
up.
it tonight a little bit more.
Which, by the way, they picked me. I did not enter any contest or anything like that. Like, they found me, and I thought it was a joke. I thought it was a prank when the NBC Sunday Night Football account followed me and said, DM us, we want you to be the fan of the week. I was like, this is funny. You guys are messing with me. And they were... Anyways, Dave, why don't you read us those rushing numbers? You've read this on your Stat Geek, but they're very telling. Go ahead.
Yeah, I said it on Stat Geek that this is the most unbalanced team that the Steelers have faced this year. And I don't know if they'll face a more unbalanced team. And what's interesting is you can be unbalanced, but be really successful, or you could be unbalanced and it's not working for you. For the Bears, it's the latter, not the former. Because they average, let's do the averages. They average passing the ball in a game 127.4 yards a game, which is dead last in the NFL. But yet in rushing, they're 5th in the NFL, averaging 136.6 yards. So yes, you heard that correctly. They average more rushing yards than passing yards per game this season. And this is why they're last in the NFL in total yardage as well, but they're not bad running the ball. But yet it doesn't matter. You would think a team that's getting so many rushing yards is because they're winning games and that's what they have to do. And really it's not. It's really that's all they can do.
I can't remember the last time that this was the case where a team ran the ball better than they threw the ball in today's pass-happy NFL. But how much? Go ahead, Dave.
The Ravens worked like that, a little bit, especially what would I say? Probably the 2019 Ravens more than anything.
Yeah, yeah.
But that was because they were doing it and having success. This is different. This just feels different.
So let me ask you all this about Justin Fields. He's had his ups and downs. He's had some really bad games, and he showed some promise. On a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being really concerned, 1 being not concerned at all. What's your concern level with the Steelers defense going against Justin Fields? Brian, we'll start with you.
My only concern is just letting up and not really, just not taking him seriously and them getting out to a fluke big lead early. Like for some reason, not expecting him to go deep on them and just launching one, or the potential to go back to the Terrell Pryor game against the Raiders back in 2013 when he ran for like 97 yards on one play just for a touchdown, just to beat him. Just really, if you take this guy lightly, you know how much talent he has. I don't care whether he went to Ohio State or Ohio University. Forget where he played college. The guy has a lot of talent. And so you just cannot really, let him, take him lightly. Because if you do, he has the potential to burn you. He has been a part of some wins this season.
So what is your number again out of 1 through 10?
It is it's a 5.
It's a 5.
Thank you for answering the initial question. Dave, I'll ask you the same question, 1 to 10. What's your concern level for the Steelers defense going against Justin Fields?
I like Bad's 5. I like the in the middle of the road because he's a first round draft pick from this past year. So, there's the potential. You kind of have an idea. You never know if these guys are going to pan out. And it could be any week that could be their big bust out week. And if you think about it, if you're talking about a young quarterback, how many starts is this going to be for him? He didn't start the season. So I don't know if is this start number 3, maybe. I might be off there. I'm just throwing a shot in the dark at there. But it's on Monday Night Football on the national stage. If someone's primed for a breakout game, this would be it. But we also know that do even half of the first round quarterbacks ever work out in a given draft, if you know what I'm saying. So it doesn't necessarily mean that he'll ever break out. And that's part of the reason why he didn't go as high, is because they thought not that he'll never break out, but he might need a little bit more time to develop. So I'm kind of glad that the Steelers are getting him now rather than December, because at any given moment, he has that potential. Until we see it, and I'm hoping that we just don't see it against the Steelers. So that's the thing. It could happen. Jeff loves that potential word. All it means is that you haven't done it yet. I just want him to not do it against the Steelers.
This is his 6th start of the season out of 8 games for the Chicago Bears.
Oh, really? He started that many?
You gotta remember, Andy Dalton got injured, and so he was kind of thrust into the starting role earlier than they had planned. Not terrible numbers, 991 yards, only thrown 3 touchdowns with a 59.5% completion percentage. So yeah.
How many interceptions?
Dave, I just closed my phone.
Come on, why'd you do that? Because I wanted to know the touchdowns versus interceptions. That's know what I'm saying?
I'll bring it. It's right here.
Yeah. Okay. So
he is 2 and 4 as a starter.
7 interceptions, 3 touchdowns. 7 interceptions.
So yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Sacked 26 times.
Well, I know the Bears have given up 30 sacks. So him having 26 of them is not.
Well, I think that's so funny. He's been sacked 26 times. That's insane. In 6 starts. Okay.
I can't wait for.
I'm missing Brian. Brian's got a little delay there. We apologize about that.
Brian,
So, the guys like this, guys like Fields always kind of scare me a little bit. And the reason why is.
And we're back.
You just never know. Boy, we are just on our game today. You just never know what you're going to get. I remember the Steelers playing Michael Vick. I remember obviously Lamar Jackson. And Steelers actually haven't played Lamar Jackson as many times as you think in his career with the Baltimore Ravens, but they've played mobile quarterbacks. I know there's others that I'm not forgetting, whether it's Donovan McNabb in the past. And they just break your back. It's those plays that you think you have them, and then they break a run for 25 or more yards. And it's just, I'm going to say that it's a 6 in the current concern level. It's a rookie, but I remember Dick LeBeau used to just toy with rookie quarterbacks. Can we say the same about Keith Butler defense? Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, Dave, go ahead.
I was ready for Brian to go off on a long soliloquy. Yeah, I mean, the Steelers have done well against rookie quarterbacks even since Coach LeBeau. So I'm going to say I don't know if it's as much toy with them or just make sure they get the job done. I don't care. They don't have to go out and crush the soul of Justin Fields. Just go out and win the game.
I'd love to see a dominant win. I'm not going to.
That would be nice.
I would love to see a dominant win, one that we can kind of
to start working on stuff for the next morning in the second half.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. So, Dave,
you need Carolina.
Good.
Oh, I'm sorry. I must be delayed. You need a Carolina victory from Thursday Night Football from a few years ago.
Yeah.
That was a good one for sure. I remember that one. Let's a good segue into the injury report. Dave, do you have that handy? After you sneeze, God bless you.
Yeah. Well, please tell me I muted that though, didn't I?
You did. I was just looking at you.
Okay. So if you're listening in podcast form, you're like, what is Jeff talking about? If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook Live, yeah, you saw that horrendous reaction. So this is me stalling to bring up the injury report. There were 5 names on the list, and there was only one player who did not participate, and that was Eric Ebron. I'm thinking his injury had to happen in practice last Thursday.
I think you're right.
He was not on there Wednesday. Thursday he was limited, which tells me he was practicing until he got hurt. Didn't practice Friday, haven't practiced since. And honestly, as some people were saying, don't know that they're overly concerned if the 2 tight ends played like they did last week, if Ebron's not there. But of the 4 other players, we've got to say, because I know everyone's asking about it, Chris Boswell was a limited participant. That is really good because that's step 1 of moving through the protocol. Right. You've got to come out and they're not going to let you go full, most likely, in your first practice back. You're going to have to be limited, do some work, and then you have to be evaluated to see where you go from there, if I understand it correctly. So, but it was Ben Roethlisberger did practice because it wasn't a Wednesday. They treated it a lot like Wednesday of last week. He practiced, but he didn't practice fully. He just was limited some, probably, more than anything, given reps to the other 2 quarterbacks. Cam Hayward was limited with an ankle. I think that's more of a vet thing. And then the other strange one was BJ Finney with a back injury. For all we know, that could be like Ebron last week. He might have hurt it during practice. We don't know. We'll have to see what it says tomorrow.
Can we talk about the tight ends real quick before we go to the Chicago injury report? Even if Ebron comes back, tell me why he should get more playing time than even someone like Zach Gentry at this point. Either one of you guys, I don't care who goes. I mean, it's one of those situations where Gentry, my goodness, he has good hands. He has good hands, and he's a heck of a blocker. I'm going to trust KT Smith and Jeffrey Benedict on this when they say he's a really good blocking tight end now. Why would you play Ebron? Why is it Ebron even a concern at this point? Anyone? Brian?
I'm surprised he's still here, to be honest with you. I thought he was going to be traded the other day to another team. Maybe they couldn't get anybody for him. And a lot of people said one of the reasons he's here is because Juju's not, and there's still going to be plenty of balls to go around. But from what I saw from Zach Gentry, it was really impressive. And it takes a while for some of these guys to really come into their own. Remember, Jesse James, yes, he caught that ball. Now, Jesse James took a while to become a good blocking tight end. And one of the things that he's being relied upon, he's had a little bit of a reawakening in Chicago. Jesse James has, but one of the things about him, it just took him so long to become a blocker in Pittsburgh, and he was something he was working on for a while and now he is a very good blocker, and he was relied upon in Pittsburgh as a blocker. That's kind of what I see happening with Zach Gentry. He has paid his dues. He's in year number 3. He's put a lot of time in practice. The people that don't know, that aren't in that practice bubble, do not understand what the coaching staff understands about him. Now we're finally getting to see it. And those 3 catches the other day were a pretty big deal for this Pittsburgh Steelers team. They don't get in the position to win that game if they don't have key catches from Mr. Gentry. So I don't see really, you keep on seeing Eric Ebron's numbers and targets go down and his playing time go down. I just really don't see why he is still here. They might have not had a chance to trade him, but I think Gentry is probably internally becoming the number 2.
Dave, what do you think?
Well, I was trying to look up the exact date, but remember Gentry went on IR last year. It was in November, but it was later
early.
in the season.
Yeah,
I thought it was earlier, but no, under the transactions, it wasn't until November where he went on IR. So he didn't even have a full season last year. When it comes to Ebron, it's funny what someone said it in the live chat, and I didn't leave it up there to say it. It's like, because he's a volunteer, not a hostage. And everything about Ebron being traded, I don't know that anything from that came from anything even remotely close to the Steelers. That's just stuff that fans wanted, that they brought up. I didn't hear any reliable source say that they were even considering doing such a thing with Ebron. That was just something that a lot of the fans were thinking that they could. But when he's injured, who's going to want to give you anything for him anyway? So either way, but to me, when it comes to Eric Ebron, if the Steelers are in a game where they have the lead and they're trying to protect the lead, continue to score, all that other stuff, and run their normal offense, I like Zach Gentry and Pat Freiermuth. I butchered his name. Freiermuth. There, I got it right. But if you're in a game where the Steelers are down and Ben's going to have to try to be Ben and be chucking the ball like crazy, that's to me when you want an Eric Ebron on the field, because even though in the preseason he was a much better blocker and didn't really transfer over into the regular season, if you're going to have him out there, he's basically another wide receiver right now, because the other 2 guys work better as a tight end than what he does.
No, I agree. I think Ben Roethlisberger compared Gentry to Matt Spaeth, and if they could find another Matt Spaeth, that would be great.
Yeah.
The last time we talked, last Thursday, Melvin Ingram was still on the team. I want to talk to you all about this too. Yeah. He's been traded for a conditional 6th-round pick to the Kansas City Chiefs. Brian, my first question is, what were your thoughts when the trade was made?
Too bad they couldn't get more for him, but they couldn't get more for him because nobody wanted to pay that price, and that was the best price they can get. So Dave made a great point with the famous Mike Tomlin line, volunteers, not hostages. He's a hostage, and they decided to set him free.
Dave, what were your thoughts immediately when you heard about the trade?
Not surprised. We were all waiting to see where he would go and what they would get. Apparently, KC was the only team that was interested. The fact that they got a 6th is good. Now, it's conditional. They didn't say what the condition is. I have my own theory on that. Should I share that real quick?
Sure. Go for it.
I think what the condition is that the Chiefs currently have 2 6th-round picks. They have their own, and they have one they acquired from the Ravens as part of the Orlando Brown Jr. trade. And I think the condition is going to be they agreed that the Steelers are going to get either the higher of the 2 or the lower of the 2, and they don't know which one it's going to be until everything's set after the season's over. It could be other things like based on his play or how many snaps he plays. I don't know if the Steelers would even do that. To me, I think that's what the condition is, but that's just a shot in the dark. But I mean, are the Steelers a better defense now that Melvin Ingram is gone? I don't believe they are better, but at the same time, it wasn't if it was going to be a problem, it didn't improve them enough to keep him around, if you know what I mean. And so the fact that they got a pick is good, because if not, they were probably just going to have to release him.
Do you think it would have been a problem, Dave, if he would have stayed? Think about James Harrison, TJ Watt. TJ Watt's rookie year with James Harrison sitting around and leaving early and being like a butthead in within the organization. Do you think that Melvin Ingram was going to cause an issue?
I mean, well, let's just say this. He went from having such a terrible groin injury, he couldn't even ride the bus to Cleveland, to where he then practiced yesterday for the Chiefs. So if you know what I'm saying, there had to be more going on. Obviously, there was more going on behind the scenes. We all know this, because if not, the trade never would have happened. How bad was it? I don't know. I don't know if he'll ever say. I don't know if the Steelers will ever say. To me, the way Coach Tomlin talked in the press conference about, liking to bring players up through the draft and have them, buy into the philosophy, just told me that, to me, Ingram came in with something else completely in mind, though, the way Steelers do things, which I mentioned it on one of my podcasts. I don't know if it was Scobro Show or Stat Geek or which one, or even the Breaking News podcast. That, to me, that goes to show that perhaps he came from a place where, hey, you aren't working with the guy sitting next to you for you to get better. Even if, how many guys on the Steelers defense have trained their replacements and help bring them up to speed to get them good enough to ultimately be their replacements? That's not how it is everywhere else. And maybe Ingram didn't like having to mentor a player like Alex Highsmith that then got the playing time over him. And if that's it, then that's not the way the Steelers do things. And that's probably why he wasn't happy, which meant he wasn't really a true Steeler. And so let him go.
Now, Michael Beck, who I have on my Let's Ride podcast every Friday, the Blue Check Beck segment, he said that he heard both Chris Wormley and Cam Hayward kind of allude to it's better that he's gone. In other words, it's the best of both worlds. Not that they wanted to see him go, but it's better that he's gone. Brian, did you think that Ingram could have been a major issue in that locker room?
Absolutely, he could have been. Now you heard when he came in that you had a guy that was a really good citizen and great in the locker room. But if there's whispers, if you're hearing some stuff like that, it's a problem, and you take whatever pick you can get, because you don't want to be in a position where you're the Cleveland Browns right now, where they could have traded Odell Beckham Jr. 2 days ago, and now they're saying that they're not going to have him for the rest of the year, and there's something going on there. He might end up on another team as well, or they might just send him home for the remainder of the year. So you did not want to do that with Ingram, because that's a huge loss. So you have to decide and not worry about the court of public opinion when you make a decision like this to take a 6th round pick for Melvin Ingram III. There's writing on the wall. There was writing on the wall 6 years ago when LeGarrette Blount was a problem. We did not know the kind of problem he was. But when you have guys like Brett Kiesel saying, yeah, it's good he's gone, like they said back when he went AWOL after the Tennessee game, when that happened, you realize that, all right, you just got nothing for this guy, and now he's with the Patriots. So this is something you got a 6th round pick back. You got the guy, you paid for the guy for 5 games. You only owe him about $60,000 more. From what I might have heard that on Dave's show. They do run together, so I do apologize for that.
Yeah, I'll run together.
But you only. Yeah, so because I've been listening to everything we put out lately, and I heard that $60,000 number. So you got off relatively cheap. This is not a guy that you lost any player for picking up. So you had him for the rental. You only had him for another 10 games anyways. So now you have that 6th round pick, and it's just a point where you don't have the problem. And if there's anything taking away from the cohesiveness of that group, and you always recently, you feel that the Steelers have been a cohesive group since AB left. So, I kind of feel that he was going to be a problem, and you don't have to go down that road of having, pie in your face, which I'd love to have some pie in my face sometimes, but you don't want to have egg on your face or what have you in a situation like you would have if you were Cleveland right now, because now they've got a big problem.
No, you're right. They do have a big problem. They would have had a big problem if they didn't trade him. And I think they learned their lesson from the previous players that you mentioned, whether it's LeGarrette Blount, James Harrison, even Antonio Brown. And someone mentioned, I think it might have been Clarence Washington in the live chat, saying the Steelers have a very young locker room. And they do. They do have a very young locker room. And sometimes that can be impressionable. So it's one of those situations where sometimes you got to cut the cancer out, I guess. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about taco time, see what that's all about, if there's anything to get excited about, or maybe if it's just another player, as well as over-under, our predictions, and trivia. So if you're on the podcast side, head over to part 2. If you're watching live on Facebook or on YouTube, stay tuned because we're not going anywhere. Be right back. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to part 2 of the Steelers preview. I'm Jeff Hartman, senior editor behind thesteelcurtain.com. Joining me as always, Brian Anthony Davis and Dave Schofield. Brian is checking himself out. He'll check back in here in a second, but Dave and I are here. Dave, let's talk a little bit. We talked at the end of part 1 about Melvin Ingram and the trade. Now I think it's important. I did this article for the website updating the outside linebacker depth chart, and Taco Charlton is now on it, and he's expected to be that guy that Ingram was. What should expectations be for Steeler fans? I think that's what the common question is. We've heard Taco Charlton's name before. He was drafted before TJ Watt in that draft. What should expectations be in your mind for the fan base?
Ooh, expectations are, don't think just because he was drafted ahead of TJ Watt that you have anything close to TJ Watt. He is not the same. Yeah. He's not the same style of outside linebacker. He's more of a 4-3 defensive end, which I know some people say, well, aren't they? No, they're not. He could play defensive line if he had to. He's a thicker, bigger, stronger type player. I don't think he's a guy you want to have dropping into coverage. If you know what I'm saying, that's not something I would put him on the field and then ask him to do a lot if I was the Steelers. You can't say never, because then you know what's always going to happen and that it's not going to be a threat. I think Tuska would be more lined up to do that, in my opinion. But bottom line is, you're really looking at the TJ and Alex show. You really are, with the other guys just filling in not absolutely, but filling in when they need to, but not nearly to the level that you would have had when Ingram was here. But at the same time, Alex Highsmith played 100% of those snaps. That was the Seattle game, right? They played 100%.
Yeah, it was. Yep.
So it's. I don't know that it's going to affect the Steelers all that much. I just think he's a little bit of a different style than what you're going to see. Otherwise, in my opinion, but I really don't know all that much about him. I know he struggled everywhere he's been so far. So hopefully he can, get a career resurgence in Pittsburgh.
The one thing I want to make very clear is a lot of fans were like, oh, you guys traded away depth. We just traded away depth for a 6th-round pick. Yeah, if an injury happens at a lot of positions, there's not going to be a person just waiting to come in that's like, and we're fine. We're not going to miss a beat. I mean, think about if Najee Harris were to have a sprained ankle and has to miss a game. There's going to be a pretty steep drop-off in talent there. If you look at even someone like Devin Bush or Joe Schobert, yeah, you have Robert Spillane, but it's just not the same in terms of talent level. Injuries happen, and so the Steelers made an educated decision, and they thought it was for the betterment of the team, the locker room, the organization, and they like Taco Charlton enough. I think the Steelers are very fortunate that they had Taco on their practice squad for the last month. This isn't a player that's coming in and having to learn the system. He knows it because he's been there. He's been in it. I said this on my Let's Ride podcast. I think sometimes people think practice squad players are, sitting there watching practice on the sideline. They're in it. They're doing everything. And a lot of times they're scout team and stuff like that. Brian, we were talking about expectations for Taco Charlton. In your opinion, what should be logical expectations for the fan base?
And I believe you said eating bonbons as well, which I thought was really funny.
Yes, you did. I mentioned that one time to you guys before the Slack channel. I was afraid you didn't know what I was referring to.
My dad, my mom,
Jeff used that phrase.
Real quick sidebar. My mom's been a teacher. She retired recently, over 40 years, and he would say in the summers, she probably just sits around eating bonbons. Like he used to always say that.
Yeah.
He's going to work. Or you probably sitting there eating bonbons.
I've heard that, yeah. Yeah. So I'm glad you did that. That's the same context. I've always heard that phrase. So yes.
Anyways, go ahead, Brian.
Taco Charlton he has disappointed in a lot of places, but we have seen these guys, and the Patriots always did a really good job of taking these guys that have disappointed in a lot of places and then come back and fit into their system really well. And we've talked about this a lot about the Steelers, as well as the Steelers are a pretty good destination for a team sometimes that need the culture, for a player that needs culture and to be in a good situation. And right now, I feel the Steelers are one of those teams. Taco Charlton looked pretty good. I know his PFF grades weren't that great, but I don't consider PFF grades. I consider the Bry test or the eye test. And what I see that guy was playing with a passion. He probably knows this is his last chance. But he also knows what it's like to play for a Super Bowl champion team as well, because he played with the Kansas City Chiefs in the big one 2 years ago. So I really like the fact, I think Taco Charlton had a lot to do with this decision that they made, because they could have just said, hey, I understand you're not happy. We're going to do our best here, Mel, but we can't afford to lose you. But then you look over and you see Taco eating his bonbons, and you're like, all right, put down the bonbons, Taco. Come on in here. You've got a chance. And guess what? Taco could work out for them. So I absolutely love it. And I keep on wanting to say Taco.
People in the live chat are misconstruing what I said about injuries. I said that injuries are inevitable. And I said, not every position do you have someone that's just going to come in and just, pick up where the person in front of them left off. I never said once
you can't do that the whole way across the board.
Injuries are going to happen. They've already happened. I mean, look at the groin club. It continues to expand every week, it seems like. So, I understand that 2020, injuries derailed that defense. 2017, when Ryan Shazier got hurt, derailed that defense. I'm not suggesting. I'm saying that Melvin Ingram was quality depth. Yes, they lost that. They have Taco Charlton. There you go. Okay, let's get into what was I going to talk about next? Let's talk about the division a little bit. Now, we're going to be on Sunday for another AFC North recap podcast. The Baltimore Ravens and the Minnesota Vikings, the Cleveland Browns, and the Cincinnati Bengals square off in Cincinnati. Gentlemen, I want to ask you, at this juncture of the season, are you thinking Steelers have legitimate shot at division, or are you just thinking keep pace in the AFC, just get a spot in the playoff dance if you're looking that far down the road? Brian, what do you think?
They have absolutely a legitimate shot in this division to win this division for the second year in a row, and I really think it could happen. They have to take care of business. But as far as getting help's going to come, because these teams are going to be playing each other, and we're having a situation where that's going to happen this weekend. You have Cincinnati and you have Cleveland. And I know what I've already prepared the rooting guide. I know what the rooting guide says who to root for here, but you might have a problem with it, because you have to decide, do you want to kill off Cleveland's year right now, or do you want to have Cincinnati closer to you and hope you beat them in a couple of weeks? So that's the big decision that has to be made with that, on who to root for this weekend. But Cleveland-Cincinnati is a very interesting game. They're going to take each other out. Somebody's going to take one of these teams out. No matter what happens, it's going to be good for Pittsburgh, because we know one of your rivals are definitely going to lose unless that tie comes into play.
So who are you rooting for, Brian?
The rooting guide says
who are you rooting for?
Wait. The rooting guide says root for Cleveland. It actually says root for Cleveland. I just can't do it. Listening to your Let's Ride the other day about how much you hate Cleveland, I hate them more. I love the fact the name for just calling him the big turd, Myles Garrett. I mean,
everyone should know who I'm talking about if I talk about the giant turd. It's just
the giant turd. Man, that guy's fantastic though. But Baker's not, and I just cannot root for Baker Mayfield. I can't, and I can't root for Myles Garrett. So I have to root for Cincinnati in this game and hope the Steelers take care of business. No, I expect the Steelers to take care of business when they play them on the 28th, and you got to do that. And the idea of killing off Cleveland doesn't mean they're killed off, but at 4-5 at this point in the game, they're definitely going to have some problems getting back in. So I can't wait for this game. This isn't like a couple of weeks ago during the bye where I'm doing stuff with family and doing laundry and not paying attention to football. I am definitely paying attention to Cleveland and Cincinnati this week.
What about you, Dave? What do you think?
Well, first of all, going back to the big turd. All right, I'm sorry, but every time he's mentioned and you talk about it in that, got to go back, especially with cousin Jeff in honor of his Let's Ride or Die crew on his Tuesday evening. He's got to send out his mailbag question, and he always has a gif of Shooter McGavin from the great movie Happy Gilmore. What did they say about Happy Gilmore? What was the joke about him as a hockey player? He held one record. He was the only guy to ever take off his skate and try to stab someone. And they're saying that as a joke. But at the same time, you could say that Myles Garrett is the only guy who ever ripped the guy's helmet off and tried to hit him with it. It's on the same level to me. So I always think about that there. So that's my comparison. I've always thought about that there.
That's so good. I never thought about that.
I've always thought about that every time. I think I'm the only person who ever took off my skate and tried to stab a guy.
Is that goal regulation size or what?
Anyway, back to that game, which, by the way, we never did the Bears injury report. I just thought I'd throw that out there. Getting back to the game, all logic and numbers, and I'm a numbers guy, tells you that you should be pulling for Cleveland because you want Cincinnati losing and bringing them further back, giving them a divisional loss because they are 2-0 in the division. That would help out the Steelers since the Steelers have already lost to them. But part of you's just got to be like, this could put the dagger in the Browns in it puts them in a bad spot. It really does. So either way, you're going to be happy that one of the teams lost, no matter what. But unfortunately, one of them are going to have to win. So, oh well.
Just like the Baltimore-Cincinnati game, I won't watch it because I literally can't stand both of those teams. I don't want to watch Joe Burrow. I don't want to watch Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield sucks, by the way. And I don't want to watch any of it. I really don't. Well, why don't you, Dave, read off the injury report for the Bears while we have a moment, and then we'll
I don't know how many of these players are important or not. I don't know.
There's two that
roster up, but there's two. I was even going to say three. Okay. One, Khalil Mackfoot did not practice. He was close to going on IR before the last game, but they didn't do it.
That's what I thought.
So I would be surprised if he's ready to play for this game. And that's huge. That's enormous. Now, I also say one of my first articles with Behind the Steel Curtain was when Khalil Mack got traded about how the Steelers were going to face him. It didn't matter because when he played for the Raiders, Marcus Gilbert shut him down. But that was how long ago was Marcus Gilbert? I mean, he's retired now.
Yeah.
So it's been a while, but having him not in the equation would be a good thing. Then you got Al Ogletree, the linebacker. He didn't practice. And then running back Damian Williams did not practice. But one thing that's not on the injury report is they did start the window to return for, is it David Montgomery, right? Is that the running back that was on the?
Yeah.
Yes. I thought I had the right first name. I thought it was the same as mine. But I don't know if, like with the Steelers, how they brought them back to practice, but didn't put him back on the roster right away. I'd be really surprised if he ends up on their roster for Monday. Anyone else on the list that really matters? J.P. Holtz as a tight end. I mean, they have three other tight ends ahead of him. Nick Foles.
Jeff has his jersey.
Yeah.
Who?
Yeah.
J.P. Holtz.
Yeah. And then the other one was Eddie Jackson, a defensive back, didn't practice with the hamstring. So
Eddie Jackson's a very good player.
I don't know the NFC teams.
That's actually significant. That's a good defense, but with Ogletree and Mack and Jackson, if those guys aren't in there, the Steelers really have no excuses because they are left with the one guy that's healthy is Roquan Smith, and he is absolutely fantastic. They're saying that he's becoming even more important than Mack on that defense as becoming the face of the defense. And that's something that you would have heard last night on Know Your Enemy when that show was on. But it's really interesting. These guys, those are three guys on the defense that I think that are very significant.
Good to know. Good names. I mean, yeah, for sure. Let's do a little over-under. Then we'll do our predictions. We'll get into trivia. This is not a lot of over-unders. Here we go. Over-under. Ben Roethlisberger attempts 28.5. Brian, over-under.
I'm going to say over, but I'm going to say slightly. And I'm going to go with, I believe it's either you or Dave said this week, that the ideal is 25 to 35 for Ben. And if was that you, Dave? Was that
that's Jeff?
That was you, Jeff?
Window, yeah.
And so, I mean, that if he stays in that window, that's fine. So, I mean, I can see it being slightly over. They're definitely going to try to run the ball in this game, but he's still going to kill you with a pass.
Dave, 28.5, over under. Jefferson Hardman, fantastic job setting that line. That's a really good place to put it. I would have put it right, 28, 29 is the magic number. I want it to be under, but I'm going to say that it's slightly over, but I'm hoping it's not more than 30.
Okay, I'm going to say under. Najee Harris rushing yards. I was tempted to set this in triple digits, but I didn't. I set it at 92.
Ooh,
Brian
that's
Anthony
another
Davis. Good one. I've done this for a while. Brian, over under.
I can't help but going over with this guy. I just think he's hitting his stride. And I really feel, Dave made a comment earlier on the show about Justin Fields and shining on Monday Night Football. I could really see Najee Harris announcing to the world, sure, he was rookie of the month this year, and he finally got his due, but we've seen other rookie lists where he's not even on. But I just see him just announcing to everybody, I have arrived. And Mr. Chase in Cincinnati, you have company as the great rookie this year. I could just see that happening. And him on the bright lights, the big stage at home. Man, I just picture it. I see him after the game doing a post-game interview smiling. And I could see that happening over and over in my head. I hope I'm correct with that. But I think I take the over with Najee. I think he's going to do it.
Dave, over under 92 yards?
I'm going over. I said it on Stat Geek this morning that the Bears, when it comes to their defense, they're actually more known for as a pass. They're 11th in the NFL in pass defense. They're 25th in run defense. But they've been behind it in a lot of games. So teams are running the ball. I'm saying over. I'm with Brian. I think he has a big game.
Najee Jerome Harris receiving yards.
You didn't answer, Jeff.
Oh, I'm going to say over. I think he goes over 100. Najee Jerome Harris receiving yards 63, over under, Brian.
I'm going to go under slightly. I could see him getting about 40. What did he get? 20 something last week, but he had a really nice game with 91 rushing yards. He has the potential to break one every single week with the way they're using him in the passing game. But I mean, I'd say 35-40, right around there is your sweet spot. So let's go slightly.
Dave, what do you think about Najee Jerome?
I'm going under in the receiving yards this week because I wasn't just going over in the rushing yards. I'm going way over.
I think this is a game, like Brian said, where he could really break out in a lot of ways. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to go Lev Bell in Buffalo type game, but it could be a big game for Najee Harris. If you're a fantasy owner, if you don't start him already, you're an idiot. But yeah, you want to get him on your daily fantasy lineup. All right, let's do Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger touchdowns, 1.5. Brian, what do you think?
I could see over on that. I could see 2. I think when you're going to see the Najee Harris, when you're seeing him going into that stratosphere, I see Pat Freiermuth doing the same thing, and I really think they're going to just start. It's not going to be a surprise anymore. Like we use them heavily one week, don't use them a lot the next week, and we mix things in. I think that they want to turn him into a Travis Kelce, and I think that they're going to start going to him more and more as I think Ben has found his Heath, and I think he's convinced that he's found his Heath. So I could see him becoming a major part of it, and the Steelers finally getting a guy you say, hey, we're doing this, and you stop it.
Dave, BTR touchdowns, 1.5.
Under.
Oh, okay. Very interesting. Let's go with another offensive player, Mr. Patty Freiermuth, with 6.5 receptions, over under. Brian,
I just sang a song about him, so yeah. I've got to say over.
Okay, Dave, 6.5 receptions,
under 6.
Okay,
or 5 or 6.
I'm gonna take the under as well. I'm gonna take the under. Let's go with Steelers sacking Mr. Fields or any Bears quarterback. We'll set the line at 3.5. It's could be lower, but I've seen these games where you think the Steelers are going to get 8 and they end up with 2. And so that's why I went with 3.5. Brian, over under.
Yeah, what you just said right there is very poignant because they really want to focus on stopping the run in this game. And I could see them not rushing a whole heck of a lot, but I'm going to be disappointed if it's under 2.5 when this man's been brought down 26 times. Then that does not include how many times Andy Dalton got knocked down. So with that being said, let's go over on this.
Okay, Dave, 3.5 Steelers sacks, over under.
I'm going over. They're the most sacked team in the NFL. So I think the Steelers get at least 4, but would not be surprised if they are going to get their most of the season and get them back up pushing for the lead in the NFL.
Yeah, I want like an 8 sack night. Remember they used to do that against Cleveland all the time. They'd always get like 8 sacks. That's what I want to see.
In Cincinnati, they would do that to Cincy too.
I want 2 strip sacks. I want 2 strip sacks.
That's fine. I'll take it. All right, let's go with sacks surrendered. So that would be Chicago sacking BTR. I have this line set at 2.5. Brian, over under.
I'm going to go under. I'm going to say 2.
Very nice, Dave.
2 seems to be the number recently. 1 or 2. So I think I'm going to say under for sure because I'm hoping that I really should have said Ben Roethlisberger throw. I should have said under for his attempts, but I didn't. But I think for that reason he won't be sacked as much because I'm hoping he doesn't have to throw as much.
I'm going to go under as well. Last one, Steelers turnovers, 1.5. They were clean last week. Do they stay clean? Do they start a streak? Brian, what do you think?
They stay clean. Go under.
Dave?
Yeah, I'm going to go under as well. I mean, it'd be really nice to do it again and have none.
I will take the under as well. All right, let's do some prediction time. Brian, how do you see this game shaking out? Dave, the current line, is it still 6 even?
Yeah, it was 6, and the over-under is 39.
Jeez. Okay. I think that's actually not a bad over.
No, it's not. It's not.
All right, Brian, what's your prediction for this game?
Well, I'm going to take the over on this one, and I am going to say that the Steelers actually crack 30. Right at 30, and they get 30 points to 16 for the Chicago Bears.
Say that final again.
30-16.
Okay. Good score. I like it. Dave, what about you? What's your prediction?
I'm going slightly less for both teams. I'm going with the Steelers. This could just be a not many possessions for the offense simply because I could see the Steelers completely dominating the time of possession in this game is what I ultimately want to see. And I have the Steelers being at home, being victorious with a score of 27-9.
Very interesting. I have the Steelers, and you can hear more about this tomorrow on my Let's Ride podcast. 27-13 victors. So take the over and take the Steelers giving the points. All right, Brian, do you have trivia?
Yes, I do.
All right, go ahead.
All right. So when you look at teams' trades, and they talk about the greatest trades in history, the Steelers are responsible for one of the greatest trades in Chicago Bears history. And if you didn't know this, you're about to find out that the Bears had got a great player at one point because of the Steelers. Now, this is probably going to give you a little idea about the era that it happened in, because the Steelers received a 3rd and a 4th round pick in a certain draft, giving up their number 1 the next year. So you know how often they give up their number 1. So this is pre-1967, the last time they didn't have a number 1 pick. Who was the player that the Chicago Bears got from the Pittsburgh Steelers because of this very bad deal?
You got to go back in the 60s. Jeff, do you have any? I'm
not, and I had no clue.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about I can't go back that far to know who the Bears would have got from the Steelers.
Well, because of this trade, the Bears ended up with the 3rd overall and the 4th overall pick in 1965. With the 4th overall,
would that be Gale Sayers in there?
Gale Sayers was their 4th round pick, which was their own pick. So no.
Okay.
But with the 3rd round pick, imagine a team that took back-to-back Dick Butkus and Gale Sayers. And Dick Butkus was because of the Steelers.
Wow, that's a good bit of trivia. I did not know that.
That's
very good. All right. Good one, Dave. What's yours?
Mine is, Brian's talking about Bears. He's talking trades. I'm going more with the title of the show and talking about, letdown games and teams losing games they shouldn't be losing. All right, I'm just going to take a shot in the dark. I'm going to ask you a number. It's kind of like, how many jelly beans are in the jar and stuff like that. So far in the 2021 season, there have been 122 games. Out of those 122 games, right now the Steelers are favored to win by 6 points. How many games do you think have a team of those 122 have a team favored to win by 6 points or more? Not Price is Right rules.
There's been some big spreads this season so far. But I'm going to say 25.
I'm going to go 18.
Okay, there have been 47 games of 6 points or more. That is 38.5% of the games so far this season, not counting tonight's game, in which the Jets are now down to their 3rd quarterback. That teams have been favored by 6 points or more. Out of those 47 games, how many of those do you think the team that was the underdog won the game?
47, you said?
Out of 47.
5.
I'll go 9.
And the answer would be 10. There have already been 10 games so far this season in which a team was an underdog by 6 points or more, and they ended up winning the game. And the Steelers have actually had a game on each end of the spectrum. And do you guys know what games those are?
Well, definitely Buffalo.
Buffalo, they were on that end of the spectrum.
And I'd say I'll let Jeff go, but I have a team in mind.
Well,
they were on the other end.
Were their favorite was Cincinnati?
I was gonna say the Raiders.
It was actually the Raiders coming off the
Okay.
Buffalo game and coming home. They were favored by, what was it? Was it 6? It was 6 exactly. Now these spreads are according to Pro Football Reference, because that's the only place that I can filter all of them to look at them that pretty. Last question of them all, and you guys better know this one, because what has been the biggest upset this season? Meaning the team that overcame the biggest point spread.
The Jets and the Bengals last week?
That's my guess.
That is absolutely correct, because not only did it do that, it eliminated almost half of those remaining in the Survivor Football League. That was a pretty big one. But out of all those games that I was talking about, out of those 47 games, 24 times a team is covered, 22 times they have not covered. There was one push. So that also tells you when Vegas sets those lines, they have an idea what they're doing, because it's almost 50-50.
They know what they're doing for sure. All right, let's do some final thoughts here. Brian, go ahead.
Mike Tomlin said something very interesting this week. Why this team doesn't pick up free agents. And he was talking about the Melvin Ingram the third situation, and basically that you bring a guy in, you teach him the Steeler way, and they believe in the Steeler way. Not to say that this team is not going to pick up free agents, and they've had very good success picking up free agents, guys that weren't born and bred as a Pittsburgh Steeler. One of those is like a guy like Arthur Moats. There's people like that have come in. Joe Hayden came in and became a Steeler, and so you see that happening, and you think about the hostage comment that he originally said back in the Le'Veon Bell days, and he dusted it off in the press conference this week. It's all about culture, and the Pittsburgh Steelers have established a culture that we think we know. But those in the locker room, they definitely know what's going on there. And here's another guy that knew all about the culture and loved the culture, and it was Melvin Ingram III. But when he didn't get his way, things started going the other way when guys got healthy, and he decided that he didn't want to be around because he should be playing more. He deserved to be playing more in his mind. Have no problem with that. But the culture and the situation is understanding where you fit in the puzzle. The Pittsburgh Steelers had a place in the puzzle for Melvin Ingram III. Melvin Ingram felt that he didn't fit anymore. So did the Steelers make a mistake in bringing Melvin Ingram III in? No. Melvin Ingram made a mistake by saying, yes, I could deal with this situation. Then when he couldn't, he asked out. The Steelers did the right thing by letting Melvin Ingram go for a 6th. If they would have let him go away for a 7th, that would be fine. They didn't just make the mistake of keeping him around, keeping him a hostage, because when you keep a guy in that situation, you're going to have problems. So the Steelers did the right thing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Melvin Ingram III did the right thing for Melvin Ingram III. So with that being said, just listen to what Mike Tomlin said the other day. It didn't work out for both of us. And that's the best way to look at it.
All right, Dave, final thoughts.
Well, I have something else I'm going to go into, but I actually had an idea for trivia tonight, but I couldn't actually get the information. And so I just thought I'd ask you guys this real quick as part of it, because Brian brought it up about Melvin Ingram and the Steelers having successful free agents. Have they ever had a successful free agent that they brought in during the summer or during training camp? Because Melvin Ingram was a very late signing, only out of more of realizing that they needed some depth, after the draft and after OTAs, I do believe. So you always got to keep that in mind. It seemed like he really wanted a job. The Steelers really needed someone, and it was more of a deal out of necessity for both sides than it really was a good fit. If you really want to go back and look at it in that context, I might be off where the date is, but what I wanted to say is I want to see a classic Pittsburgh Steelers, Chicago Bears football game on Monday night. Everything I was doing with the over under is how I'd like to see things play out in my mind. And that is, I want to see Najee Harris just going out there, running up and down the field, going for more than 165 yards, getting into the touchdown zone a couple times. And that's what the Steelers really do to win this game on Monday night. I just think it fits together well for that to be the case. But more than anything, they just need to play good team ball like they've been doing. The defense has been doing a great job playing together as a team. They did much better of staying with their gaps and their assignments this last game and coming together, not having that. I mean, Cam Hayward's going to be great. TJ Watt's going to be great. You don't have to have everyone be a superstar. You just have to all do your job to do a really good job together. So that's what the Steelers need to keep doing. Go out there and take care of business Monday night.
All right, real quick. Thanks, Mean Joe gives us $5. Thank you, Mean Joe. And he said, you think Boz, the quarterback, was successful trick play in practices that led to the game time disaster? I don't know. Brian,
I'll answer this.
Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
I want Dave. Okay. Well, I think it probably worked in practice. It worked with Alejandro Villanueva in Denver back in 2018. So they thought it worked and they gave it a shot.
Dave?
Absolutely. You don't do something like that unless you've tried it and tried it and tried. And I'm sorry, every time when I was coaching, every time we were doing specialties where we were, kicking field goals or practicing kickoffs, or anytime we had a special teams practice, which we did our special teams. Our last practice before a game was when we had that designated. You never did it with half your time was doing onside kicks or fake field goals or bad snaps or things like that. That's what we did half the time because you had to be prepared for it. Absolutely, they practiced it. Absolutely, they were comfortable with it. The biggest problem I have with it, like I said, I don't mind the aggressiveness. I don't like doing something different that can tip the team off that you're doing it, and putting a wing in motion or whatever it was that they said that they did, or having guys not line up the same way. That's the mistake that I have to say. If you're going to do a play, you've got to assume that the team you're going against is a little bit smarter than that. But sure, they probably ran through that play tons of times in practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. People rip Tomlin for this, yet they also rip him for playing conservative. They say living in your fears, and then when he is aggressive, then they don't like it. Anyways, all right, good show, guys. Dave, why don't you send us out?
Hey.
As always, we'll see you next week as the Steelers gear up for the Detroit Lions in Week 10. Make sure you check us out on our podcast platform and BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll see you next week. Take it easy.